The wind whispered secrets between the city's buildings, a day like so many others, where haste shaped the routine. Amid the hustle and bustle, a lone art booth, almost invisible to most eyes, displayed vibrant colors that contrasted with the gray of the asphalt. There, a young artist, Sophie Carter, struggled not only to express her art, but to survive. Sophie was no ordinary painter. Each brushstroke was a silent cry against a cruel fate. Life had put her against the wall, like in one of those Western movies, where the hero needs to draw his gun faster than his own shadow. And Sophie, armed with her brushes, faced cancer. Sophie's story began in a hospital room, a cold, impersonal place where the news arrives like a punch in the gut. Dr. Patel, his voice full of concern, confirmed what she already feared: the treatment was working, but more, much more was needed. Chemotherapy, the word that echoed like a sentence. The biggest obstacle, as always, was money. Without insurance, the costs were exorbitant, an insurmountable mountain. Sophie could see the desperation in her mother's eyes as she tried to hide her tears. The family's savings were running low, and the bills continued to arrive, as relentless as a sheriff collecting taxes. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep a wink. Guilt gnawed at her insides. She didn't want to be a burden on her parents. She didn't want them to lose everything trying to save her. It was then that the idea emerged, like a light at the end of the tunnel, using his art to help pay for treatment. After all, as Harry Callahan would say, a man has to know his limits. And Sophie knew hers, but she also knew she could go further. By morning, Sophie had already made her decision. He would set up an art booth on a busy street and sell his paintings. Her mother helped her organize everything, but then left her alone, left to her own devices. Sophie spent the week creating, depositing a little of her hope and pain into each canvas. Selling art, however, was no easy task. People hurried past, oblivious to the drama unfolding there. Some looked curiously, but most didn't even notice the stand. An elegant woman in a designer jacket came to pick up a painting, but gave up at the last moment. A man in a suit read the sign about selling art for cancer treatment, but walked on, indifferent. Finally, an elderly couple came over and bought a painting for $80. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a small ray of sunshine in the midst of the storm. Sophie thanked him with a sincere smile, feeling momentary relief. Every penny counted, every gesture of solidarity was fuel to continue fighting. Even though she was exhausted and under the scorching sun, Sophie didn't give up. Some people were kind, offered words of support, and even bought his paintings. Others, however, were cruel. A guy in a leather jacket came over and said dismissively that no one bought real art these days. Sophie took a deep breath and ignored the comment, staying focused on her goal. After 4 days of hard work, Sophie was exhausted. He had only sold 3 paintings, a pittance. Hope began to fade, and discouragement dominated her. But, as Gran Torino would say, never let anyone tell you can't do something. And Sophie wouldn't let her. It was then that something unexpected happened. A young journalist, attracted by the vibrant colors of the booth, stopped to talk to Sophie. He took photos of his paintings and wrote about their history on his art blog. The article went viral, and the next day everything changed. More and more people started visiting Sophie's booth, curious to meet the artist and buy her works. The story spread like wildfire on social media, with thousands of shares and comments of support. Sophie couldn't believe what was happening. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. One afternoon, a tall man in a cowboy hat stood in front of their booth. He looked closely at the paintings, especially one in black and white that depicted a desert scene with a lone cowboy. Sophie didn't recognize him at first. When he asked about her story, Sophie told him everything, about the cancer, the bills, and why she was selling art. The man listened attentively, without interrupting. In the end, he took out his checkbook and wrote a check. Sophie couldn't believe her eyes when she checked the value, $50,000. She tried to refuse, but the man insisted. It wasn't charity, he explained. He just thought the painting was good and that people needed to know about his art. You know, he said with an enigmatic smile, sometimes, we need to take risks, like in Unforgiven. And with those words, Clint Eastwood changed Sophie's life forever. The news spread like lightning. Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director, had purchased the art from a young woman with cancer. The crowd gathered around Sophie's booth, taking photos and recording videos. Everyone wanted a piece of history, everyone wanted to support the artist. Cancer patient news sites and major media outlets picked up the story, and Sophie's phone kept buzzing with messages from people wanting to buy her work. In a matter of hours, she became an internet sensation, a symbol of hope and perseverance. A month later, Sophie was preparing for her final chemotherapy session. All of his medical bills had been paid, thanks to the generosity of Clint Eastwood and the support of thousands of people who were moved by his story. She even received a letter from Clint himself, encouraging her to continue telling her story through art. Sophie was radiant. That unexpected gesture had transformed her life, opening doors she would never have imagined. She was preparing for her first gallery exhibition, and people from all over the world wanted to buy her paintings. That black and white painting, with the desert scene and the lone cowboy, was now part of Clint Eastwood's collection, a constant reminder that sometimes the biggest changes in life come from unexpected moments of kindness. That day in the hospital seemed like a lifetime ago. That cold, impersonal room had been replaced by a sunny studio, full of colors and inspiration. Sophie was no longer just a patient fighting cancer, she was a recognized artist, a voice that echoed hope and overcoming. But she never forgot her origins, that art stand on the sidewalk, the days of hardship and uncertainty. Each brushstroke was a thank you, each painting was a tribute to those who supported her on her journey. And, as Josie Wales would say, dying is not as difficult for a man as continuing to live. Sophie had chosen to live, fight and transform her pain into art. And she was determined to continue inspiring others to do the same. Sophie's exhibition was a huge success. Art critics and collectors from around the world praised his talent and sensitivity. His paintings portrayed life, death, hope and despair, with an honesty and intensity that touched everyone's hearts. But for Sophie, the most important thing was not the recognition or the money, but rather the opportunity to share her story and inspire others who were going through difficult times. She wanted to show that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And she knew that, without Clint Eastwood's gesture, none of this would have been possible. That check for $50,000 had been more than just financial assistance, it had been an act of faith, a vote of confidence in his talent and his ability to overcome adversity. Sophie never met Clint Eastwood in person again, but she always treasured the letter he sent her. In it, he said that he admired her courage and determination, and that he was eager to see what the future held for her. And the future, for Sophie, was promising. She continued painting, exhibiting her works in galleries around the world and using her art to help others who were battling cancer. She became an ambassador of hope, proof that, with perseverance and a little help, it is possible to overcome any obstacle. As Inspector Callahan would say, opinions are like holes, everyone has one. But Sophie didn't care about other people's opinions. She knew she was on the right path, following her heart and using her talent to make a difference in the world. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Leave a legacy of love, hope and inspiration. Showing that, even in a world full of hate and violence, there is still room for kindness and compassion. Sophie Carter, the young artist who fought cancer and conquered the world with her art, became an example for us all. Proof that, as Frankie Dunn would say, above all else, you need to protect yourself. And Sophie protected herself with her art, with her faith, and with the love of her family and friends. And in the end, she won. The story of Sophie and Clint Eastwood became the stuff of legend, an inspiring tale that was retold in hospitals, schools, and homes across the world. People were moved by the actor's generosity and the young artist's courage, and felt inspired to do good and never give up on their dreams. Sophie became a symbol of hope for many cancer patients, who saw in her story proof that a cure was possible and that life could be beautiful even in the midst of pain. She received letters and messages from people of all ages, who told her their own stories of struggle and overcoming. And Sophie made a point of responding to every message, offering words of support and encouragement. She knew how important it was to have someone who believed in you, someone who would hold your hand when you were about to fall. She remembered the days when she felt alone and desperate, not knowing how she was going to pay for her treatment. And she felt grateful for having found people who helped her move forward, who gave her the strength to fight and who showed her that life was worth living. And, as William Money would say, it's hell to kill a man. You take away everything he has and everything he could have. Sophie knew that cancer was trying to take everything from her, but she wouldn't let it. She would fight with all her strength to win this battle and to continue living her life to the fullest. She dedicated herself to her art with even more passion, creating paintings that portrayed the beauty of life, the strength of hope, and the importance of solidarity. His paintings became a manifesto, a warning cry against indifference and hopelessness. And people responded to this call, buying his works and supporting his cause. Sophie became a philanthropist, donating part of the money she earned from her paintings to institutions that cared for cancer patients. She wanted to give back for the help she had received and make a difference in the lives of other people who were going through the same situation. She knew she couldn't cure cancer, but she could offer comfort, hope, and support. And, as Walt Kowalski would say, you shouldn't die until you've done something good in life. Sophie was determined to do good, to leave a positive legacy in the world. She wanted to be remembered as a talented artist, a generous philanthropist, and an inspiring person. And she knew she was on the right path. Every day, she received proof that her story was touching people's hearts and encouraging them to be better. She was grateful to have the opportunity to use her talent to make a difference in the world. She never forgot Clint Eastwood, the man who changed her life with one act of kindness. She considered him a friend, a mentor, and an example to follow. She admired his courage, his integrity, and his generosity. And she knew that, without him, none of this would have been possible. That $50,000 check had been the starting point for an incredible journey, a journey that made her a better person and allowed her to achieve her dreams. As Harry Callahan would say, "Go ahead, make my day." And Sophie made every day count, enjoying every moment and using her talent to spread joy and hope. She became an advocate for art as a form of therapy, encouraging other cancer patients to express their feelings through painting, music, dance, or any other form of artistic expression. And she saw incredible results. Art helped people deal with pain, express their emotions, and find meaning in life in the midst of adversity. Sophie Carter, the young artist who fought cancer and conquered the world with her art, has become a beacon of hope for us all. Years passed, and Sophie continued to paint, exhibit her works, and help other people. She got married, had children, and built a beautiful, united family. But she never forgot her fight against cancer and her promise to use her art to do good. She created a foundation to support cancer patients and their families, offering financial, psychological, and social help. The foundation became a success, helping thousands of people face the disease with dignity and hope. Sophie became a reference in the fight against cancer, participating in events, lectures, and awareness campaigns. She used her voice to defend patients' rights and to warn about the importance of prevention and early diagnosis. And she continued to paint, creating paintings that portrayed the beauty of life, the strength of hope, and the importance of solidarity. His paintings have become a symbol of resistance and overcoming, inspiring people of all ages and backgrounds. As Frankie Dunn would say, "Mo Chuile," which means "in my blood, my dear." Sophie considered all cancer patients as part of her family, as people who shared the same struggle and who deserved all her love and support. She dedicated herself to her foundation with passion and enthusiasm, working tirelessly to ensure that all patients had access to the appropriate treatment and support they needed. She knew she couldn't cure cancer, but she could offer comfort, hope, and dignity. And she felt grateful to have the opportunity to make a difference in so many people's lives. She knew that her story had touched the hearts of many and that her art was inspiring others to follow their dreams and never give up fighting. She remembered the days when she felt alone and desperate, not knowing what the future held for her. And he felt happy for having overcome all the obstacles and for having built a full and happy life. She knew that cancer had been a difficult ordeal, but it had also been an opportunity for growth and learning. She had learned to value every moment, to love intensely, and to fight for her dreams. And she wanted to share this message with the world, to show that life is a precious gift and that we should make the most of it. She wanted to inspire other people to be brave, to be generous, and to be happy. As Inspector Callahan would say, you have to ask yourself, do I feel lucky? And Sophie felt lucky to have survived cancer, to have found love, and to have the opportunity to make a difference in the world. She never forgot Clint Eastwood, the man who changed her life with one act of kindness. She considered him a friend, a mentor and an example to follow. She admired his courage, his integrity, and his generosity. And she knew that, without him, none of this would have been possible. That $50,000 check had been the starting point for an incredible journey, a journey that made her a better person and allowed her to achieve her dreams. Sophie Carter, the young artist who fought cancer and conquered the world with her art, became an icon of hope and overcoming. His story inspired millions of people to believe in their dreams and never give up fighting for a better world. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Leave a legacy of love, hope and inspiration, showing that, even in a world full of hate and violence, there is still room for kindness and compassion. And so, Sophie Carter's story continued to be told and retold, inspiring generations of artists, patients, and ordinary people to believe in the power of art, hope and generosity. His life became an example of how a gesture of kindness can transform the world and how perseverance can overcome any obstacle. Sophie became a legend, a symbol of resistance and overcoming. His art continued to move and inspire, conveying messages of love, hope, and solidarity. His foundation continued to help thousands of cancer patients and their families, offering support and dignity. And even after his death, his legacy continued to live on, through his paintings, his foundation, and his inspiring story. Sophie Carter became an example for us all, proof that life is a precious gift and that we should make the most of it. She taught us to never give up on our dreams, to fight for our goals, and to believe in the power of kindness. She showed us that a gesture of generosity can change the world and that art can heal the soul. As William Money would say, "I deserve to die." But Sophie didn't deserve to die. She deserved to live, love, and continue to inspire the world with her art and her generosity. And, in a way, she continues to live, through her legacy and her inspiring story. She taught us that life is a journey full of challenges, but it is also full of opportunities. She showed us that we can transform pain into art, sadness into joy, and despair into hope. And she inspired us to be better, to be more generous, and to be more human. She showed us that love is the most powerful force in the world and that kindness can transform lives. She taught us to value every moment, to love intensely, and to fight for our dreams. She showed us that life is a precious gift and that we should make the most of it. As Walt Kowalski would say, "Stay off my lawn." But Sophie didn't want us to stay away from her lawn. She wanted us to enter her garden, admire her flowers, and be inspired by her story. She wanted us to share her message of love, hope, and solidarity. She wanted us to join in her fight against cancer and become agents of change in our world. She wanted us to believe in the power of art, generosity, and perseverance. She wanted us to be inspired by her story and become better every day. As Harry Callahan would say, you have to ask yourself, do I feel lucky? And we feel lucky to have known Sophie Carter's story and to have been inspired by her life and art. She showed us that life is a precious gift and that we should make the most of it. She taught us to never give up on our dreams, to fight for our goals, and to believe in the power of kindness. Sophie Carter, the young artist who fought cancer and conquered the world with her art, became an example for all of us, proof that life is beautiful and worth living. And at the end of the day, that's the message she wanted to convey to the world. A message of love, hope, and inspiration. A message that will continue to echo for generations, inspiring us to be better and build a more just and supportive world.